was 12 years old, the first time I didn't go to the outdoor toilet alone at night. Before that, hundreds of times, without a single shred of fear, as casually as walking into my own bedroom. After that night, never again. My grandmother's house stood at the very edge of the village, right where the vegetable garden bordered the woods, or rather, a sparse grove that turned into a dense, genuine thicket a couple of kilometers deeper. The outhouse, as usual, was out in the yard, about 20 steps from the porch, tucked behind the old bathhouse. That night, I wasn't woken up by the urge to use the restroom. It was a sound, low and guttural, as if someone were growling and whimpering at the same time, somewhere beyond the fence, coming from the direction of the woods. Village dogs don't make sounds like that. I grew up around them, knew every single bark from the neighbor's mutt to Grandma's yard dog, Nada. Nada, by the way, had wedged herself underneath the porch and refused to come out until morning, even though she normally slept right by her spot near the shed. Grandma, hearing me toss and turn by the window, stepped out of her bedroom and without a word drew the curtain tighter. To my quiet question of "What is that?" she gave a short, clipped answer. "Go to sleep. Don't look out the window at night if you hear things like that." By morning, I convinced myself it must have been a stray dog, maybe a fox. Noises always sound distorted at night, and kids have overactive imaginations. But the next night, I genuinely needed to go outside, and Grandma, breaking from her usual routine, came with me carrying a flashlight, and as I noticed, a pocket full of salt tucked into her apron. "What's the salt for?" I asked. "Just in case," she replied. "People used to say, if something walks along the fence at night and won't cross the threshold, you pour salt on its trail and it goes away. If it crosses the line, salt won't help anymore. Then your only option is to run inside and lock the door." I didn't take it seriously. Grandma's superstitions were just part of rural life, like charms against the evil eye, and I was used to nodding along without really listening. But when we reached the outhouse, Grandma's flashlight swept across the darkness and caught a silhouette right by the fence. Not a dog, not a human. Something on two legs, but hunched over, with disproportionately long front limbs covered in patchy, matted fur that looked as though it were permanently wet. Its eyes were two pale spots, reflecting the flashlight beam the way an animal's eyes do, but set far too humanly close together. The creature didn't move. It just stood by the fence, staring right at us, and let out that same low, whining growl I'd heard in the dark earlier. Grandma jerked my hand hard, spinning me around toward the house, and hurried me back without looking back, tossing pinches of salt onto the ground behind us. Over her shoulder, we got back inside, bolted the heavy wooden latch which, as I recalled, we'd never used before, relying only on a simple hook for show. That night, Grandma didn't sleep. She sat by the kitchen window, occasionally crossing herself and whispering under her breath. By morning, I found tracks near the fence, neither canine nor wolfish, of a strange shape, looking like something halfway between a paw and a hand, with long claws deeply pressed into the soil. The tracks ran along the fence, in a circle, never once crossing the line of salt Grandma had scattered the night before, and finally vanished toward the woods. I asked the old neighbor, Petrovich, if he had any idea what it could be. He stayed quiet for a long time, rolling a cigarette, before answering reluctantly, as if he hated dredging up the past. "People around here call it different things. Some say werewolf. Others call it a chupacabra, having watched too much television. But truth be told, it was wandering these parts long before television ever existed. Back in the day, every household protected themselves simply, salt and a ward above the door. Nowadays, the young folks don't believe, they forget. But it doesn't forget. He told me that a few years back, a neighbor's goat had vanished from a nearby village, just slaughtered clean, drained of all blood, with the carcass tossed over the fence, as if put on display deliberately. The owner claimed he'd seen the creature by his shed at night, the exact same thing I had described. Ever since then, Petrovich said, the locals made it a rule never to leave livestock outside overnight without a heavy lock, and strictly forbade children from wandering into the yard alone after dark. I stayed at Grandma's for 2 more weeks that summer. The creature never showed up by the fence again, at least not while I was looking. But at night, I would occasionally hear that low, growling whine drifting from the woods again, as if it were pacing the perimeter, waiting for the moment someone forgot the salt or the latch on the door. Grandma passed away 3 years ago. The house has stood empty ever since. None of the relatives want to move in, even though the building is sturdy, well-maintained, and the yard is huge. Last year, I finally went back there to clean up, get it ready for sale. I stayed late and decided to spend the night. I checked if the old tin can of salt was still in the kitchen cabinet. It was there, nearly full, as if someone had been regularly replenishing it, even though the house had been vacant. I didn't bother asking myself who. As I got ready for bed, I carefully poured a solid line of salt along the threshold and locked the door with that very same, still functional, old wooden latch.